Hola, bom dia, todos. Do I say it correctly? Unfortunately, I will stop there in Portuguese. I'm very happy to attend this amazing event. It's really a nice event. And I must tell you that it was not very easy to organize. It was organized by a very small team, and they dedicated a lot of time, and the result is really impressive. So I want to say a big thank you and congrats to the team, especially to Manuel Ogando. Please. So I'm very happy to talk about my favorite author, Rothbard, and my favorite technology, Bitcoin. As you know, Rothbard was one of the main proponents to separate money and the state, but he wanted to do that with gold. So, since Bitcoin is often described as digital gold, what would Rothbard think of Bitcoin? Let's try together to imagine that, knowing that it's not easy to imagine that because he was a genius. So, very obviously, he would come up with something much more intelligent than what I can guess. But let's try anyway. As regards the political aspect of Bitcoin, I think that he would love Bitcoin. He would love the censorship-resistant aspect, the individual sovereignty aspect. But as regards the economic aspect, probably it would be a bit more tricky, a bit more complex. So I will focus on the economic aspects. And I don't know what you think, but my guess is that he would like Bitcoin as a potential sound money. But paradoxically, he would still propose to remonetize gold. He would still propose to remonetize gold. And despite of that, he would agree that Bitcoin may win in the competition against gold later on. So I will try to argue in favor of this thesis in three steps. First, I will make a short synthesis of Rothbard's view on money. Second, I will say why, according to Bitcoin, Rothbard may think that, according to Rothbard, Bitcoin may become sound money. And then I will explain why, according to Bitcoin, government should still remonetize gold. So, first, a short summary of Rothbard's view on money. As you know, his theory and history of money is based on Karl Menger and Mises. According to them, governments should have no role in money. They have taken control gradually of money with very bad results. Fiat money is a disaster. Fractional reserve banking is not a good idea. It's not viable on a truly free market with real free banking. And actually it's fraudulent and it's not economical, and it was promoted by the state. And if it survived, it's mainly thanks to the state, especially thanks to central banking, which is a catalyzation device in favor of big banks and in favor of the governments. So, this has very bad consequences: price inflation, business cycle, the destruction of the price system, and finally the destruction of money and the destruction of the market economy. So the consequence is that we should, gold became money over the centuries, and it was artificially demonetized by the governments, so then we should remonetize gold. Of course, it was a very short summary, and his analysis is much richer in his book. And he proposed to remonetize gold. What does it mean exactly? He had a very original theory of how to remonetize gold. Of course, the first step is to abolish legal tender. And then we should define the dollar as a fixed weight of gold. Dollar should be a fixed weight of gold, as it was before the 20th century. So every existing dollar currently should be considered as a claim on some specific weight of gold. There should be genuine redeemability of dollar in gold, And all the gold of the governments and the central banks should be transferred to the banks and to the people. And after that, no more Fed notes. They can be destroyed. We don't need any Fed notes anymore. And each bank can issue their own notes with their own name on the notes. But each of them would be some specific weight of gold. And then there will be free private coinage of gold coins, as before, long time ago. And we can close the central bank. We don't need it anymore. And we can even, later on, we can suppress the name dollar. We can replace it with a gram of dollar or an ounce of dollar so that people understand that the dollar doesn't exist anymore. It's not an autonomous, independent entity anymore. Gold should be dollar, dollar should be gold. And then we can do that with the other currencies. He wrote about dollar, but the analysis is the same for the other currencies. So now a few words about how to define the dollar in terms of weight of gold. So this is a tricky slide. It's a bit technical, so if you are not crazy about economic theory, you can skip it. There's no problem. But personally, I struggled to understand that, so I wanted to share it with you. It's not really a price, it's a weight of gold. It's a definition. What definition should we adopt for the dollar? The first element to take into consideration is that this definition should not be too low. For example, if we take the Bretton Woods system price of $35 per ounce of gold, this would be too low because it will have a very big deflationary impact on the economy. Why? Because since that time, a lot of dollars have been created, so there will be too many dollars. So we will need to destroy a lot of dollars. It will be hard. The commercial banks should call in all existing loans and stop lending money. So it will not be a good idea. So Rothbard was very pragmatic. He didn't want to impose a solution, but he explored various scenarios and two main scenarios. The first option is that we should define the dollar so that the Fed's gold stock covers all the Fed's liability. What are the Fed's liability? It's the Fed's note plus the deposits due to commercial banks, the reserves of the commercial banks at the central bank. So in that case, he made the calculation. The definition of a dollar would bring a price of gold, which would be $676 per ounce of gold. But there's a second option which is more interesting according to Rothbard. Instead of covering only Fed's liabilities, the gold stock of the Fed should cover the whole money supply. The whole money supply. All the liabilities issued by all the banks, not only the central bank, but also the commercial banks. It's more or less the monetary aggregate M1 as it was defined at the time of Rothbard. The notes plus the checkable deposits. So according to his why does he favor that? It's because it will allow 100% reserve banking, full reserve banking, which he favors against fractional reserve banking. And in his calculation, it will bring a definition of $1,696 per ounce of gold. And according to my own calculation, then it will be between $35,000 and $40,000 for 1 ounce of gold. So of course, the owners of gold will be very, very happy. So now, why can we think that Rothbard would think that Bitcoin can become money? So, what money is not, according to him? Money is not an abstract unit of account divorceable from a concrete good. This is not the case of Bitcoin. It's not divorced from a concrete good. It's based on energy, computers, infrastructure. Money is not a useless token only good for exchanging. Money is not a claim on society, a very fashionable theory nowadays. It's not a guarantee of a fixed price level. Money is simply a commodity. But not so simply a commodity, actually. It's a commodity that is a general medium of exchange. Money is a commodity that serves as a general medium of exchange. Very important definition. Every word is important. And the concept of general medium of exchange is not so easy to grasp. And Rothbard is very honest on that. He adds that it's impossible to define very precisely at what step something becomes a general medium of exchange. So what about Bitcoin? We can argue that Bitcoin is a commodity. We know that Bitcoin is already a means of exchange, but we can guess that Rothbard would say that Bitcoin is still not a general medium of exchange. Whatever you define a general medium of exchange, you can't say that Bitcoin is a general medium of exchange now. So he would think that Bitcoin is not money. Bitcoin is not yet money. But it can become money. So if it's not money, what is it? I think that he would use a very important concept in human action by Mises, the concept of secondary medium of exchange. What is it? It's an asset that you keep with you. You know that you can't use it to buy a coffee, but you know that you can sell it very easily the day you need some fiat money to buy your coffee. For centuries, those kinds of assets were jewels, and now they are government bonds or very liquid assets. They are the most marketable non-monetary goods. You know that money is the most marketable goods, but among non-monetary goods, there are goods that are more or less marketable. And the most marketable non-monetary goods, they are what Mises called secondary medium of exchange. And I don't know what you think, but for me, Bitcoin is exactly that. Exactly that. It's a secondary medium of exchange. You can hold it, and you know that you can sell it when you want to get some fiat if you want to buy a Lamborghini or a coffee. And the interest of those assets is to reduce the opportunity cost of holding cash. And from an economic point of view, and it's exactly Bitcoin. So another aspect important is that you can't really own Bitcoin because it's information and there's no intellectual property as per Rothbard. You can control it. You can possess it because you can have practical control on this scarce resource. Bitcoin is a scarce resource. You can have a practical control if you have your private keys. So I think that Rothbard will agree on that, especially if he sees this fascinating talk by Stefan Kinsella, who is here today, and in 2019, so I advise you to watch it on YouTube. But a very tricky question is, if you can't own Bitcoin, if there's no property title, can it become money? And libertarians are not, don't agree on that. And a possible answer by Stefan Kinsella is that money is not a legal phenomenon, it's an economic phenomenon. And it's the economic phenomena of a medium of exchange to avoid the problems of barter. So even if there's no property title, even if you can't own something, it can be money. So we can conclude that Bitcoin could be money, despite of that. It's not the only aspect, but it's an aspect that is important. Another aspect is that Bitcoin has all the necessary physical properties to become money, even if it's not a physical thing. We can argue that it's a digital commodity, even if the fungibility is not completely perfect. It depends on if you talk about the fungibility on the protocol level or on the social and legal level. It's a tricky question. But it's divisible, homogeneous, portable, tradable, auditable, etc., like gold, actually. And of course, it's scarce. And it's emerging through a market process, which is very important in the Rothbardian analysis for something to be money. And I think that Rothbard will agree that there's an increasing demand for a kind of assets that is very useful to protect savings against monetary inflation and political control and surveillance. So the context is good for Bitcoin to become money. And it will not violate the regression theorem, which is a very important thing. I insist on that because here again there's a lot of controversy among Austrians. before May 2010, the first purchase of a good with Bitcoin, pizza, there was a non-monetary use of Bitcoin, which is the criteria for the regression theorem. There was a non-monetary use. What was it? Bitcoin was a collectible. It was an object of interest for geeks, computer scientists, cryptographers, activists, libertarians, anarcho-capitalists, and anybody. And even today, we can say that Bitcoin has a non-monetary use. What is it? First, it's a decentralized time-stamping system, very efficient, more efficient than other time-stamping systems, and it's useful in the industry, in legal services, and more importantly, it's a payment infrastructure. It's an infrastructure of value transfer, and it's not a monetary use. If I want to send you $1 billion, I can use this infrastructure by converting my fiat into Bitcoin, send you some Bitcoin, and then you convert the Bitcoin into dollars. So I have used the Bitcoin infrastructure as a payment infrastructure, but even if Bitcoin is not money, it's a non-monetary use of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin becomes money later on, if we agree on that, there will be no violation of the regression theorem. So in that case, Bitcoin will be part of money in the narrower sense, according to Mises, and Bitcoin on layers 2, like Lightning Network, would be considered as a money certificate and not as fiduciary media. So this is a very interesting typology of money by Ludwig von Mises. I don't have time to explain it, but it's very, very interesting. You should read Mises, and you should read also Sefer Dinamus, because in his very good book, Principles of Economics, he made a very good synthesis of this typology by Mises. So, I think that according to Rothbard, Bitcoin could become sound money. Why? Because it's hard money. I mean, it would be hard money. It's very costly to produce, and the government has no influence. And he would consider that there is a very impressive volatility today, but it's probably a very temporary phenomenon. It will decrease if the adoption continue. And he would like the disinflationary emission of Bitcoin. He will understand that this is going to bring a price deflation, and it's perfectly okay. Natural deflation is okay for Austrian economists. And he will agree that in the Bitcoin economy there will be less debt to fund investments and business, but there will be more equity funding, which is fine. And he could even think that Bitcoin can be better than gold on certain aspects. First, because there's a supply cap. And second, because we don't need an additional money for small transactions, as we needed some silver for transactions that are too small to use gold. We can use Bitcoin for very small amounts, especially on the Lightning Network or other layers too. And contrary to gold, Bitcoin is an improving technology. There's some progress over time. It can be improved over time. So it's a huge advantage. So Bitcoin, according to Rothbard, can become money and will be sound money. But paradoxically, I think that he would still propose to remonetize gold. Why? First, let's disregard 3 wrong options. The first wrong option is to give legal tender to Bitcoin. It's the choice that was made in El Salvador, but the problem is that it's imposed by the government. So Rothbard would not favor that. It's just impossible. Second, we should disregard avoid the strategic reserve as proposed by Trump, because it would be government managed. Of course, Rothbard wouldn't like that. And more interesting, we should avoid the Hayek's proposal because of private currencies competing each other's. Why? Because, as Rothbard explained very extensively, in the Hayek's system, fiat money still exists. We don't suppress fiat money. And there's a competition between fiat money and private monies. And it's not so obvious that people would choose the new private monies, because they would prefer to continue to use something they know. They already know, they have known the dollar and other currencies for a long time. So Rothbard explained that the Hayek's proposal is not a good idea, it will fail. It will fail. So in a Bitcoin situation, probably Bitcoin would be more attractive for the public than new monies issued by banks. But we can't be sure that Rothbard would think that it's enough for Bitcoin to win in this kind of competition where fiat still exists. I'm not totally sure, but I think Rothbard would be skeptical on that. So I think he would still propose to get rid of fiat. This is the priority, to get rid of fiat. How do we do it? According to him, the only way to denationalize fiat is to link it to a commodity. It's the only way. And what commodity? It could be a market-based market basket of commodities. He analyzes this scenario, but he doesn't like it because it will be a government imposed and managed, even if there is some Bitcoin in this commodity basket. So we should link fiat money to a single commodity, and could it be Bitcoin? Maybe Rothbard would think, okay, let's ask the government to define fiat money into Bitcoin. This is possible, but I don't believe that. I think that he would not propose that because he would think that Bitcoin is not money. It would be arbitrary to ask the government to define fiat money into something that is not yet money. I think that's the analysis that Rothbard would have. So he would propose to remonetize gold. It was chosen by the market. And there's an interesting question is, would it be unlibertarian to ask the government to define dollar in gold? And he has an interesting answer. He says, take the example of price control. If government creates price control, of course we should abolish the price control. But the only way to abolish the price control, what is it? It's a government law. It's a government decree. It's a government bill. The government has to undo what it has done. It's the only way. And it's the same with money. And the analysis of Rothbard on that is very interesting. The government should undo the demonetization of gold by redefining the dollar in gold. And of course, we should remove taxes on Bitcoin and then let the market decide. There will be competition between Bitcoin and gold. And maybe Bitcoin will win according to Rothbard. I think he would accept this possibility. So in conclusion, he would like Bitcoin, he would still remonetize gold, he would accept that Bitcoin may win, and at in the conclusion of his book chapter, The Case for a Genuine Dollar, he wrote, I would not advise anyone to bet their life savings on any of these proposed new currencies getting anywhere in this competitive race. So he was talking about the potential new monies issued by banks. And probably today, if he was talking about new currencies, getting anywhere, he would talk about the shitcoins. All the altcoins that are pretending to compete against Bitcoin. I think he would say, I would not advise anyone not to own any Bitcoin. He would not say Bitcoin is money, we should adopt Bitcoin. He should say, I would not advise anyone not to own Bitcoin. And I think maybe he would buy some Bitcoin. Thank you.